It's been reminded on many occasions that it's been suggested that every character and every archetype and every symbol in every story is an aspect of our self, an aspect of our psyche. But it has been found that unlike the moralistic parables or the teaching stories of many persuasions, that it's in the Sufi stories that they bring these together and cut to the chase, so to speak, revealing to us an essence. So let's see what this Sufi story brings up for us on this occasion. It's the story of a very ordinary man who became a traveler on the road, but he was a kind man. But one day, in his travels, he came to a well, and out of that well came the plaintive cries of several creatures. So being the kind man that he was, he unwound his long turban and let it down into the well. And first of all, up came a snake, a venomous snake. Catching its fangs in the turban, it was brought up to the surface and released. But before slithering away, the serpent said to the traveler, "Take part of me," and he gave him a slough of his skin and said, "If you are ever in trouble, burn this and I will be there to help you." But as he was about to slither off, he said, "Oh, there is a human down there. He is an evil man. Be careful of him." And then the traveler let his turban down again, and this time he drew up a female rat. And in thanks for being saved, the female rat pulled out 3 of her whiskers and said, "If you are ever in need, burn these and I will come." And she also said, "Beware of the human who remains in the well. He is an evil man." And the rat skittered off. But just as our traveller was about to depart, leaving the human to his fate, the human cried, "How can you save these other creatures and you do not save me? How can you leave me down here?" And so, with his good heart, the traveller lowered again his turban and pulled up this human man. Of course, they both went on their way. The traveller found himself in a city and made his way to a side street where he took up residence in a very simple abode, making just a subsistence living. And one day he thought to himself, "Why am I suffering so? Why do I live in this state?" And then he remembered the rat and what the rat had said. So taking the leather thong that was around his neck, containing the little pouch that had his amulets in it, he took out the whiskers of the rat and burned them, and the rat immediately appeared in front of him. And the rat asked, how can I help you?" And the traveller explained his fate and said, "You know, I'm living in this state. Can you assist me?" "Yes," said the rat. "Tomorrow morning, when the dark and the light meet in the sky, go to the city gates, and there you will find a basket." And so, doing as he was told, the traveller went and found at the city gates a basket that was filled with gold. His future was assured. He took it back and he started to lead the good life, eating good food, buying good clothes. But then the king of that place found that there was gold missing from his coffers. So he sent out criers into the street to find his gold. Now, when the criers were out in the street, a certain necromancer, who was proud of his abilities, offered his services to the king, and going about his business, he discovered and related that the gold had been taken by a rat. Now the king said this was totally ridiculous, and that the necromancer was trying to pull the wool over his eyes, so the necromancer lost his head. But of course it had been broadcast all around the fate of the necromancer and why it was that he lost his head. And so, as it happened, the human who had been saved by our traveller had overheard what the rat had said to the traveller. And so he immediately went to the palace and he said, "I know who's taken your gold." And he pointed to the traveller, who was apprehended and thrown into jail, awaiting the moment when he too would lose his head. But then, in this dire state, the traveller remembered the words of the snake, and taking off the thong around his neck with his pouch, he took out the piece of skin and burned it, and there appeared the venomous snake. "How can I help you?" Of course the man said, "I long to be free." "It shall be done," said the snake. The very next day there was a great hue and cry in the palace, and the cries came from the chamber in which the king's son slept. And when they went into this chamber, they saw that the prince had wound around his neck a venomous snake. Now all kinds of people were called, those who had a way with snakes, but no one could release the prince from this creature. But of course the word was passed around, and certainly came to the ears of the jailers, and then to the ears of the prisoner, our traveller, who immediately told his jailers to take him to the king, because he could save the prince's life. So it was done. So the traveller, being taken up to the chamber where the prince had the venomous snake wrapped around his neck, the traveller said to the king, "I can release your son from this bondage, but only if you bring the brain of such and such a man. And of course this man was the human who had been in the well. This immediately was done. The human man was brought to the palace. His head was lopped, his skull was severed, and his brain removed and brought before the snake, who immediately unwound himself from the neck of the prince and slithered under the cloak of the traveller, and both were released into freedom with many gifts from the king. What is it that is implied when it's said, these stories cut to the chase, bringing together the symbols, the archetypes, the characters that constitute our being, our psyche, to reveal to us an essence, something that perhaps we've arrived at, but has not yet been brought to consciousness, to conscious awareness. What arises out of this story for you as an awareness? Snake, rat, man. What do they represent in us? Where are we now? Does the severing of the skull, the offering of a brain to the serpent, signify?
Perhaps the demons, you can use your demons, and one demon can be offered to another.
Certainly. 13.
In a sense, it's how you use them which makes the difference.
Yes.